Congratulations to the IRF Summit and partners for convening this important conference. Today, there is widespread concern for true religious freedom and freedom of thought around the world. The world is moving dangerously toward nationalism, communism, and totalitarian regimes, which all threaten true religious freedom. The Washington Times Foundation stands in full support of the leadership of Ambassador Sam Brownback and Dr. Katrina Lantos-Sweat and all the IRF Summit partners in the global effort to defend, support, and advance religious freedom for all. The Washington Times has brought great attention to this important cause. We are joined with you in this effort as we work to reinforce three fundamental values: freedom, family, and faith. Together with the Universal Peace Federation, which has a global foundation in 172 countries, with support from heads of state, prime ministers, scholars, parliamentarians, and religious leaders of all faiths, we convened several conferences and forums in 2022 to help educate global leaders about threats to religious freedom. These two premier sponsors are fully committed to engage our global coalition in this effort to stand for religious freedom, which is the bedrock of all freedoms. Indeed, it is the basis of all human rights, which come from God alone. It is a universally shared value of all faiths and people of conscience. Let us work together to achieve lasting religious freedom throughout the world.
Please welcome back IRF Summit Co-Chair, Ambassador Sam Brownback.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're ready for a wonderful session this afternoon. I don't know about you, but I've already had a number of just fabulous, substantive conversations with great people and really building the relationships that the world moves on. The world moves at the speed of relationships. The better, the stronger the relationship, the bigger the bandwidth, the more you can get done. And I hope you're building those relationships here. I don't know about you, but for me, getting here to Washington, coming in from Kansas, I felt like a bit like a kid going to his birthday party. Just, I'm excited. Something big's going to happen here. And I hope you are too, excited about things that are going to happen here and the things that are going to come out of this very session. Thank you. Yeah. I also, as an example, I want to say one quick thing about where I think the movement is. I've worked with this movement since the late 90s, and back in that point of time, you'd be troubled to get 3 or 4 people in a room to talk about religious freedom. It just wasn't all that much interest. And now we'll have over 1,000 people at this summit, in and out over the 2 days of it that we have here. The movement is growing, and I honestly believe that this meeting this year, IRF Summit 2023, is going to be our breakout game. That this is the game where people look at this movement, they see the breadth of it, they see the interest in the subject, they see the importance of it in a broad array of fields, and we're going to be playing at a higher level. We're going to play up at the next league. They're going to say this is a topic that we need to elevate. And we need to be a part of that. We need to be a part of that push to move this movement to the next level. To do that, we've got to be serious and substantive and well-networked and respectful, obviously, of each other's viewpoints and each other's efforts. There's going to be division. There's going to be different people looking at different topics, different ways. But if we can keep focus on the fundamental, that this is about religious freedom, it's about it for everybody, it's about it for everywhere. So when we break out to that next level, what does it mean? It means we're on the agenda of the G20. It means we're in the boardroom of these big corporations like we heard about at the last discussion. It means in the next panel you're going to have up here equal citizenship in Muslim-majority countries, regardless of your religious view or point of view. It means in major religious organizations, this becomes a top-tier, constant issue that the organization itself pushes. That's what we've got to do to get this agenda where it needs to be, to stop the killings, to stop the arrest, to stop the harassment, and to encourage that people of faith can freely stand and participate in the global economy, in the public or private space that they choose. This is a major foreign policy issue. We're seeing it right now, today, in the Ukraine, the invasion by Russia. Part of that was driven by Ukraine splitting off to form its own Orthodox Church that really drove Putin mad about this topic and mad about Ukraine splitting out from the Russian world. Well, they have every right to do that. They have every possibility. They should be able to do that. This afternoon, you're going to hear on a number of key topics, key individuals on this. But I really want to encourage you to think about this movement at the next level up and what you can do to step your game up to that next level. I've got my Kansas City Chiefs socks on now as we're stepping up to the next level, going to the Super Bowl. Let's take the international religious freedom topic to the Super Bowl. Let's move forward. God bless you all.
My name is Arizo, businesswoman and help orphans and my fellow women in Afghanistan. I want.
Please join us in welcoming representatives from the Vulnerable People Project here with us today. We call your attention to the screens for a message from the Honorable Anthony Blinken, the 71st United States Secretary of State.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to address the third annual International Religious Freedom Summit and to reaffirm the United States' strong and enduring commitment to advancing religious freedom for all. The diversity of this gathering reflects the collaboration these challenges demand throughout the world. I'm grateful for everyone's engagement and leadership. And a special thanks to this summit's co-chairs, Ambassador Brownback and Dr. Lantos Sweat, for their tireless and bipartisan work to lift up the voices of persecuted individuals. Sam, Katrina, thank you. Freedom of religion is a bedrock American value. The very first freedom in the First Amendment to our Constitution. It's enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a fundamental right for all people, no matter where they live, no matter what they believe or do not believe. That right, to think and worship in our own way, to follow our conscience, to change our beliefs, is inextricably linked to so many rights that we hold dear. The right to express ourselves freely, to assemble peacefully, to participate fully in society. When religious liberty is at risk, those other freedoms are jeopardized as well. Yet, some 80% of the world's population still cannot practice their faith without serious restrictions or risk. And that has consequences for all of us. Time after time, we've seen how religious persecution can undercut stability and inclusive economic development, spiraling into violence and conflict. Meanwhile, countries that respect human rights and foster inclusion find themselves better positioned to grow, deliver for their people, and contribute to addressing our most pressing global challenges. For this reason, protecting and promoting religious freedom is vital to safeguarding America's national security and continues to be an essential part of our diplomacy around the world. Last January, our Ambassador at Large for Religious Freedom, Rashad Hussain, was sworn in after being confirmed nearly unanimously by the United States Senate. As you'll hear, he and our team in the Office of International Religious Freedom have been working alongside many of you and leaders around the world to address discriminatory laws and policies, to advocate for those who've been unfairly targeted, to help encourage tolerance and respect. We're joined in these efforts by a coalition of 42 countries, the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance. This past November, I named a dozen nations as countries of particular concern because of their egregious violations of religious freedom, from Russian authorities raiding and brutally beating Jehovah's Witnesses to the People's Republic of China perpetrating an ongoing genocide against predominantly Muslim Uyghurs. We've similarly designated individual perpetrators, including officials from Burma who have carried out crimes against humanity against Rohingya. These designations carry significant penalties, such as economic sanctions, travel bans, to hold abusers accountable and deter religious persecution. This spring, the State Department will release our 25th Annual International Religious Freedom Report, providing a comprehensive review of the state of religious freedom in nearly 200 countries and territories across the globe, and illustrating how the U.S. government has advocated for this critical right. And of course, every report and designation is complemented by the work of our department and embassies worldwide, whether that's meeting with prisoners of conscience, shining a spotlight on abuses and restrictions of religious freedom, or modeling America's approach to pluralism in the diversity people encounter whenever they enter a U.S. embassy or consulate. In all of our efforts to advance freedom of religion and belief, advocates and groups like yours play an indispensable role. You bring the voices of the victims to the attention of the world, often at great risk to yourselves. Your organizations are frequently the first to report persecution and the first to support those in desperate need. Your courageous advocacy empowers governments like ours to press other countries for greater accountability and action. People of faith, like all people, deserve to live free from fear and oppression. And with your continued partnership, the State Department and the entire United States government will continue standing strongly for the right of every person to worship and believe as they choose. Thank you.
Next to the stage, Sheikh bin Bayah, Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophilus III, Rabbi David Saperstein, Imam Mohammed Majid, and moderator Pastor Bob Roberts.
So good evening or good afternoon, and we are so excited to be here. I'm excited to be with this panel. I know them, every single one of them. I have a relationship with them. And it's interesting because from this stage in 2017, one of the most profound things that's ever taken place at the National Prayer Breakfast took place when Doug Coe had asked me earlier in the year to see if I could get this sheikh who wrote something called the Marrakesh Declaration to come and speak along with the rabbi. And the rabbi that I'd come to know and have read most of his books was Jonathan Sachs. And so we had a conversation where Hamza translated, and from this stage, we began to talk about what religious freedom looked like, what peacemaking looked like, and how we could work together as different faiths in the world. Doug called us and he said he wanted to see us immediately. And so we went over to where Doug was and he began to visit. And he said, Bob, you need to do everything you can to push this forward with pastors, imams, and rabbis. And so we did. And so we started these retreats, first in Abu Dhabi, and then Morocco, of pastors, imams, and rabbis representing about 20 cities. And it was a game changer, and in the U.S. And so some of those pastors, imams, and rabbis, I think, are in this room. If you are, would you just stand up real quick? Just stand up real quick if you are, and you were a part of that initial group. And it is now in 20 cities. It's in 10 countries. And last week, or the week before last, we were in Pakistan. And there's some Pakistanis here. Would they stand up that were with us? Maulana Azad, Shafat, Father James Channon. And we're so happy to be with them. And next week we'll be in Sudan. So it's spreading all over the world, and we're excited about that. And so what we want to talk about today is the whole concept of how do we live in a world where there's equality because of our faith. What does it look like, and how do we do that? So we're going to focus on the Marrakesh Declaration, which was a document that promoted religious freedom, all the way to the Alliance of Virtue, which is another document that says it's great to believe in religious tolerance and freedom and liberties, but how do we practically live this out? And so we're going to talk about that and what it was like, how it came about, and the result of that. And starting us off today is Sheikh bin Baya. And he's going to talk for a few minutes through his translator, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, about why religious freedom is such a critical thing and important thing to him. So, Sheikh Hamza.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الخاتم وعلى إخوانه من الأنبياء والمرسلين. سعادة السفير صديق سام براونباك سفير الحريات الدينية الأسبق بوزارة الخارجية. سعادة رئيس الجلسة صديق القس بوب براوبر. سعادة السفير ديفيد سيبرسون. فضيلة الإمام محمد ماجد أربطة بطريق القدس المحترم. أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، اسمحوا لي إذا كنت لم أذكر شخصا باسمه فإنكم جميعا في القلب وقريبا من اللسان. أيها الحضور الكريم، اسمحوا لي أن أتوجه بجزيل الشكر للقائمين على هذا المؤتمر الدولي على الدعوة لهذا اللقاء الهام والتي تأتي دورته لهذا العام برعاية منظمة حزب الفضول الجديد. إن هذه اللقاءات والمبادرات جديد بأن تحقق لنا بعض ما نصبو إليه. أترك للشيخ حمزة يقرأ عليكم.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the Sheikh began by praising God and all of the prophets and our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then acknowledged His Excellency, the former Ambassador Sam Brownback for religious freedom, His Excellency Ambassador David Saperstein, His Excellency Imam Muhammad Majid, His Excellency Pastor Bob Roberts, and then His Beatitude Theophilus III, Eastern Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem. And then he apologized for any name he might have omitted, but he said all of you are in his heart. Peace and mercy and blessings of God be upon all of you. Allow me to express my sincere thanks to the organizers of this conference for convening this important meeting, which is sponsored this year by the New Alliance of Virtue among the sponsors. These meetings and initiatives are well placed to realize the coalition, human fraternity, tolerance, and peace that we all seek, especially with the presence of personalities such as my friend, His Excellency Ambassador Brownback, with his wisdom, experience, and openness. In this context, we also commend the efforts of the predecessor, Ambassador David Saperstein, and his successor, the current Ambassador Rashad Hussain, who are likewise highly capable and commendable leaders. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, distinguished audience, the title of this session of my speech is Religious Freedom for the Good of All. This may stem from either the assumption that the availability of religious freedoms is in the interest of all, a hypothesis that needs to be tested and proved, and that the title is a call to make religious freedoms legitimately for the benefit of all. And this requires a mechanism as well as a theoretical and practical framework. So I'll address this topic by answering the following questions. The first, why do we believe that protecting religious freedom is in everyone's interest? What are the challenges to religious freedom, and how can we push for religious freedom in the world? By answering and discussing these questions, our conference can contribute to a shared vision for advancing religious freedom worldwide. First, why do we believe that protecting religious freedom is in everyone's interest? All religions are at risk in various parts of the world, and it is therefore in their interest to join hands and defend one another. Religious freedoms of a particular religion should enjoy the support of other religions, as each one constitutes a majority in a certain part of the world, whilst it constitutes a minority in others. If it does not cooperate with other religions in its regions of influence, it may not cooperate in turn in areas where it forms a numerical minority. Thus, religious leaders must cooperate to ensure religious freedom for all. Globalization, which has seen the movement of goods and merchandise around the world, has witnessed a similar migration in ideas and peoples of different religions and beliefs, and thus there is hardly a land that belongs exclusively to one religion in the world today. Nonetheless, the purpose of protecting religious freedom should not be based on a pragmatic calculation. It should stem first and foremost from a religious belief or principle, since all religions teach and in fact urge support for the oppressed and the protection of freedom of faith and practice. It is in fact one of the rights that Islam grants human beings. The Holy Quran states, "There is no compulsion in the religion," in 2:256. Also, the provision of religious freedom is not merely important, but necessary to ensure coexistence and peace among human beings on earth. For there is no peace in the world without peace between religions, as the Swiss philosopher Hans Kuhn put it. Guaranteeing religious freedoms, therefore, contributes to understanding the joyful coexistence amongst all human beings. What are the challenges that hinder the availability of religious freedoms? The challenges facing religious freedom stem mostly from policies that regulate societies. These may be policies that are hostile to all religions equally, whether through an ideological basis, or they may be discriminatory policies based on historical accretions and cultural memory. Factors such as poor communication, ignorance of the other who follows a different religion, fear and apprehension of religion generally, and the inappropriate practices of some religious leaders due to selfish competition or bigotry likewise intensifies these challenges. Therefore, we can only deal with the obstacles to religious freedom effectively if we understand the factors affecting these policies, and we must deal with them rationally and conscientiously. Whilst we support and advocate for religious freedom, we believe that if it is founded on the solid ground of peace and within its context, it will be truly secure and sustainable. The freedom we call for is unconditional to the extent that it guarantees the observance of public order, social tranquility, and peace in every country. Finally, how do we push for religious freedom in the world? This requires continuous effort and broad-ranging cooperation between religious leaders of different faiths through increasing mutual acquaintance between their followers and enhancing cooperation and joint initiatives between them. Likewise, dialogue and open channels of communication with policymakers are needed to raise awareness of the importance and value of religious freedom. The followers of each religion must also turn to their sacred texts to highlight teachings that encourage coexistence and tolerance, and to see their religious texts, history, and heritage in new and open interpretive contexts that allow them to discover the foundations for coexistence therein. In this regard, they must draw attention to the inspirational stories and models from their history, whose recital may contribute to spreading the values of goodness and peace in the hearts of their adherents. In this context, I thank you for dedicating this session to discussing the contents of the historic 2016 Marrakesh Declaration promoting religious freedom in Muslim-majority lands, which was jointly issued by the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace and the Ministry of Islamic Affairs in Morocco, and adopted by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. It is a model that should be emulated by other religious leaders who are called to launch further initiatives aimed at protecting minorities in areas where other religions are in the majority. Participants, the existential challenges faced by humankind increase the need to protect religious freedoms of followers of different faiths in many regions of the world. While we monitor from time to time threats to religion and religious sanctities in various regions, such as the burning of the Quran in Sweden and Denmark, we fear that these bigoted trends and extremist practices will overshadow the spirit of tolerance and joyful coexistence that we work and call for. Our country, the United Arab Emirates, represents a model where dozens of different religions, cultures, and races coexist. hundreds of nationalities living in security, safety, and respect. UAE hosted the signature of hundreds of religious leaders to the Charter of the New Alliance of Virtue. One of the most important initiatives that should be jointly pursued by religious leaders, the United Nations, and decision makers around the world are laws protecting places of worship from damage and desecration, because they are places where God is worshipped and His name is praised. The Quran said, if we did not repel some people by means of other people, many monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques wherein God's name is much invoked would have been destroyed. God is sure to help those who help God's cause. God is all-powerful and almighty. The issue of religious freedom is neither Eastern nor Western. It is not specific to rich countries nor democracies, all of which have had their share of successes and failures. Rather, discrepancy is in the pursuit of religious freedom in the most effective way possible. There is an urgent need to activate the Charter of the New Alliance of Virtue by religious leaders to support the oppressed. In conclusion, we hope that our joint efforts here will satisfy the need for understanding, dialogue, and the search for commonalities. May it serve as a general invitation to people of goodwill to unite to preserve the flame of hope for a better future for the great human family. Thank you.
أشكركم على صبركم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Peace be upon all of you.
I'm a Baptist pastor from Texas, and I love Sheikh bin Baya. I love Jesus. He does too. Now, we have some differences in our theology. And he's not letting me baptize him, and I'm not doing the Shahada. But I love this man. And I want you to never forget, you heard a speech with one of the top Muslim leaders in the world promoting religious freedom. So when you hear people say that when you hear people say that Muslims do not promote religious freedom, they don't know the right Muslims. And it all starts with this man right here. And I thank God for him. And we love you very much, Sheikh. Now, the man sitting behind me is my cohort in crime. I love this guy. And I don't know if y'all can see or not, but Majid, you need to stretch your legs out, get more comfortable, because, come on, look at there. Look at there. I mean, look at what he's wearing. Come on, Majid, don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed. Those are real life Texas boots. I mean, this has got to be the only imam in America that has a pair of alligators, Lucchese's, on the stage. And God is with you, and that's how I know it. Now, Majid, here's my question. You're one of the most humblest men I know, and the reality is you had a lot to do with Marrakesh Declaration. A whole lot to do with it. Behind the scenes, before it became public, connecting a lot of the players together. You deliberately brought other people into that. Why was it so important to you? Why did you do that?
Thank you very much, Bob, of telling people what I'm wearing. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that my teacher, Sheikh bin Baya, have just explained to us the importance of religious freedom from Islamic perspective. As an imam living in America, leading a community in the United States, we have seen the religious community in this beautiful country stood beside us at a difficult time. I was the vice president of ISNA, some state of North America, and there was a burning Quran incident in Florida, like we just now have in Sweden, and the Jewish community, the Christian communities, and Hindus and Sikh and everyone decided to stand beside us. And actually they created an organization, shoulder to shoulder, to protect Muslim rights in this beautiful country. That made me think about what can we do to protect religious minorities in the majority Muslim countries. And thank God, we're led by one of the most respected the scholar of scholars, Sheikh bin Baya, who brought Muslim scholars around him start from Georgetown to Mauritania, to Tunisia, and in Morocco. We have 250 Muslim scholars actually signed into that document. This document now is a document that we use of training imams and hopefully made it to curriculum and adopted by 57 Muslim countries in OIC. But it means a lot to me. This guy here also, like you, have been helping us in addressing the issue of Islamophobia in America. And therefore, as you stand beside us, we want to stand beside minorities in the majority Muslim countries. And therefore, the Sheikh is our leader in that, and all of us, we really appreciate this document now, grounded in the Islamic tradition, because based on the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Charter of Medina. For it is very dear to me, the Marrakesh Declaration.
Ambassador Saperstein, you've also got a pair of boots. I'm sad that you didn't wear them. But you know, I remember when you were appointed as ambassador for religious freedom. And I went to that because I wanted other people to know that I may be an evangelical, maybe a lot more conservative than you, but there's room for everybody in our government. And so it was important for me to be there for that reason. When we think about the Marrakesh Declaration and what you did in seeing that come about, what's been the result of that?
Well, first, I just have to say how honored I am to be with my distinguished colleagues here. And I do want to acknowledge Hamza Youssef, who is translating, but is an important Muslim scholar in his own right also, and we're really delighted to have him here. We're truly blessed to have Sheikh bin Baya with us. He is one of the most influential Muslim scholars and thinkers on the global scene today. And what his gift was in the Marrakesh Declaration in particular, but more broadly in his writing, is that he has taken the normative mainstream understanding of Islamic thought, not only in the Quran, but as, and this is important because we all have problematic verses in our text that resonate distrust, even hatred of other people. It is how they were interpreted normatively by the later generations that become so important. And he lifted up through the Marrakesh Declaration for the world an insight into Muslim thought about the respect for minority religions that really opened it up in a way to be seen with clarity from authoritative sources in a way that had really been hidden before. I will tell you, when I was ambassador, that it was extraordinarily useful to me as I was traveling the globe and people would express suspicions about Muslims or their fear that all Muslims were extremists, that I could cite this extraordinary document that had been endorsed by such a wide range of Muslim scholars around the world in terms of the difference that it made. So it had an impact for us in the statecraft of the United States. Those who were involved with the shaping of this and working with them, and Rashad Hussein, who's here at that time, was in the position of an outreach to the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and played a role here, and Imam Majid and Mohammed al-Sanusi and others who were in the room with us. It really made a difference. But it also made a difference as the years went on in a number of other ways. First, it spurred a number of other declarations that gave further imprimatur to lifting up this central theme that had been hidden from us before. Declarations that emanated out of Indonesia, that emanated out of Bangladesh, that emanated out of Saudi Arabia and others in the UAE, and here in America. It really made a difference there. And because it opened this up to us, it helped build further, deeper, more understanding and confident interfaith coalitions. Look around this room and just think about what I'm about to say. Look around the room, just take 1 second, just look. Look around this room and just consider, you represent a phenomenon that is new in human history. There is more interfaith cooperation as a normative part of societal life going on across the globe at this moment than at any point in human history. And the Marrakesh Declaration made a contribution to that, spurring that process that's existed for a century on the global scene. but it really helped spur it at a difficult time after 9/11 in terms of the world's understanding of what it meant to be a Muslim at this time. So it made an enormous difference that way as well, and it got many of us to look at our own faith traditions and to say, you know, I take for granted, I come from a faith tradition whose normative theology says there's more than one way to go to heaven, to find salvation in Jewish thought. So long as you believe in God and you are an ethical person, you have a path to heaven. I have no idea how many other people knew about that who weren't Jewish. And those of, I think, in every faith tradition, people who were encouraged by this model really began to lift up their own views on the rights of minority religions in this regard. And finally, this thought. At the core of this effort and what it has meant in terms of the fight for religious freedom is one basic core principle within the context of civil life. So over and above what we normally think about freedom of religion, the right to express your religious identity, to live in accordance with your religious conscience so long as your exercise of that right does not infringe upon anyone else's right, the right to worship the way you want, with whom you want, to publish your own textbooks, to preach, to teach in accordance with you. Or in addition to all of those things is this central principle. Nobody's right as a citizen in a free country should ever depend upon their religious identity, beliefs, or peaceful practices. And until we get to the day where that is the norm in every nation in the world, we will never have full religious freedom. And in order to achieve that on a pragmatic level, it does have to be set in the context at a time there's been enormous pushback against the world, against democracy, against human rights. If you don't have freedom of speech, you can't preach. If you don't have freedom of the press, you can't print your books. You see, it goes on and on. So this is crucial. And the Marrakesh Declaration really helps spur that understanding that equality of citizenship is the indispensable civil manifestation of what religious freedom will mean.
Thank you, Ambassador. His Excellency, His Beatitudes, Theophilus III, it is an honor to have you on this stage, and I appreciate you very much. I was with someone last night, and they told me in the country where they're from that there were 1.2 million Christians 20 years ago. Now there's 250,000 that are left. Broke my heart. Are these declarations, and specifically Marrakesh, are they finding their way to the Holy Land? As the patriarch of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we're all concerned about Jerusalem. As a Christian, I'm concerned about Christians that they feel welcome in the Holy Land. There's freedom of worship. Is it making a difference?
Well, thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor for me to be among distinguished scholars and religious leaders. I bring you from Jerusalem greetings. And Jerusalem, it is true, it is considered to be the spiritual home of the whole humanity, of all religions, right? And there the religious leadership, we are trying our best in order to keep the holy places, to make the holy places and the holy city of Jerusalem accessible to everybody, because Jerusalem indeed is an example of the freedom of religion, because their religion plays an important role. I mean, religion is what defines everything in the holy city of Jerusalem, and of course in the whole region, both in Israel, in the Palestinian territories, in Jordan, and the rest of the Middle East. Now, there are many challenges, it is true, but this is not something new. If one goes back into the history of Jerusalem, he will realize that Jerusalem was always a place of challenges, because this is the place where the divine human encounter took place. And therefore, this part of the earth has a unique privilege to have hosted God in there. And this is why this part of the earth is really a fountain of divine energy. Now, there are many challenges because everybody wants Jerusalem for his own, but for whatever reasons it doesn't work, because Jerusalem is a place that belongs to the whole world. Now, I want to quote our dear Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, who said that he spoke about ignorance. It is true that what really causes troubles is ignorance that prevents freedom of religion. One is this, and the other thing is the key to understand, to promote religious freedom is knowledge. I quote the Bible, the New Testament, where it is written, know the truth and the truth will liberate you, right? And our problems there in the holy city of Jerusalem, you know, there is the paradox there. There is a contradiction. On the one hand, Jews, Christians, Muslims, we celebrate together, we pray together, we join our forces together. But on the other hand, there is tension. Why? This tension is because there is ignorance. For instance, in towns or cities, both within the state of Israel or within the Palestinian territories, if there is a church, we don't have any problems. Why? Because people, they get to know each other's religious symbols, right? They're acquainted. In towns or cities that there is no church, there is a problem. Why? Because people, they think that the only religion is their own religion, right? And this is causing all sorts of problems. And on the other hand, it is true that Jerusalem can be an example of coexistence, an example of religious freedom, but at the same time it is inevitable to have some, how to tell you, there are challenges because certain people, they are not ready to accept the other's faith, the other's religious symbol, and this is what is causing troubles. But again, I firmly believe that the role of religious leadership is of paramount importance. Religious leaders, they have the power to influence their own people, and this is what we've been discussing with one of his great students, the Amir, the Prince Ghazi of Jordan, that he really respects him very much. And this is what we've been discussing, that leaders, they need to understand that their influence is, they have a great impact on the people, both Jewish leadership, religious leadership, Christian leadership, of course, Islamic leadership. I don't know if I try to pass on any message to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You matter to all of us. You don't have an easy job, and we care about you.
Thank you very much.
We support you, and we pray for you.
Well, we are there for you, not for us. We represent all of you, and I mean it. That's it.
Thank you. I have a friend last night, and he had come back from an event at Cambridge, and it was dealing on religion and society. And there were basically three things that they had discovered. That for it to work, there has to first be relationship. The second thing, once there's relationship, then there can be peacemaking. You can't have any peacemaking if you don't have a relationship. And after the peacemaking, then there's humanitarian work. We can do things together in a tremendous way. And I like that. It's what many of us have tried to do. This is the whole idea of the alliance of virtue. And so from the Marrakesh Declaration is the act of the Alliance of Virtue that says move forward. And so we encourage you tonight at 7:30, if you would, join us. There's information in your chair. We're opening our offices. The Sheikh will be there. Many others will be there. We'd like to encourage you to be a part. One last question, just a very quick question. When I think about Sheikh bin Baya, I think about Abraham and Moses. They were both over 80, and both of them made a difference in the world. Here's the question. You've made a huge difference in your life. What is your dream moving forward?
هو الأشياء إنما يقررها الله سبحانه وتعالى. ما كنت أظن أن هذه الوثيقة لما كنت أعمل عليها أنها ستكون اليوم تناقشونها.
He said that we leave things to God, but never did we dream that we would be sitting here talking about this work that we started to help the people in the region.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Please welcome former Iranian political prisoner, Roya Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Roya Johnson. I am very honored to be here today. I am from the city of Shiraz in Iran. I escaped from my country with my family because of the fear of persecution and our lives in late 80s. A religious Islamic fundamentalist dictatorship in Iran came to power in 1979 after anti-Shah revolution in Iran. They destroyed the fundamental right to choose a faith, religion, belief by establishing a theocratic government in the name of Islam. The discrimination, suppression, and oppressions of followers of all religion and denominations started not long after mullahs in Iran took power. The dictatorship regime of Iran has been reported to have executed more than 120,000 people, including individuals from all sectors of the population, such as Muslims, Christians, Jews, and Baha'is. The regime has been suppressing, assassinating, and executing Christian priests, which is a grave violation of basic human rights and dignity. I stand here before you today as a witness to the regime's abuse and to represent thousands who have been tortured or executed in Iran's prison. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard, or IRGC, came to my house in the middle of the night of October 1982. I was in 10th grade. That night, I stayed up late to study for my physics exam for the next day. My mom had been in prison for more than 6 months when they came for me. Her crime was helping mothers identifying and bury the bodies of their loved one executed by the regime. There were 15 Revolutionary Guards, all with machine guns, 5 inside my house and 10 outside. I remember the fear in my father's eyes and how he couldn't take his eyes off me. I remember my younger sister, 11 years old at that time, was standing by the jasmine flowers in our yard. She was crying very hard, but in silence. I remember my 5-year-old brother who was grabbing my legs and wouldn't let go because they put me and wouldn't let go. They put me in the vehicle. They covered my eyes blindfolded. The IRGC took me to a place called the basement many times. The basement was the guard nickname for the prison torture. In this medieval place, often the mullahs would be there doling out the punishment based on their barbaric penal code. Punishments include whipping by cable until death, electrocutions, and being hanged by the arm from the ceiling with chains for a long period of time. I was kept for four months. I saw my best friend there. She was later executed. She was only 16 years old. Marzi's, one of the methods of extortion was to ask the family and bribe to keep them from the issuing of execution, an order of execution. My father spent millions for my release from Iran. I must stress that the misogynistic and suppressive behavior of Tehran's ruler carried out under the cloak of religion has nothing to do with Islam. The mullahs abuse the name of Islam to enhance their sinister objectives. The Islam that I grew up with is a religion of peace, freedom, liberty, equality, love, mercy, and liberation. I am from a family that believe in those principles. Ladies and gentlemen, today in Iran we are witnessing a woman at the forefront of uprising, and they are playing a vital role in the fight for equality, democracy, and freedom. The struggle has been ongoing for 40 years and shows no sign of slowing down. It is important that the international community recognizes the right of the Iranian people and their determination to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran where equality, justice, and freedom become possible. Allow me to end my speech with one of the pioneers of the American civil rights movement, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I do have faith. With events like this, raising awareness and working together, we can move the arc of the moral universe toward justice more quickly. Thank you.
A warm welcome to our panelists, USCIRF Chairman Nuri Turkel, Susan Johnson Cook, former U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Brett Scharfs, Director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies, and moderator, Executive Vice President of Freedom House, Nicole Bibin Sadaka.
It is great to see a room filled with people who are dedicating their lives and their focus and their energy on religious freedom. We're going to jump into a panel. We're going to do it quickly because our time is short, and I think we could talk for 22 hours, but I understand it's 22 minutes if I'm looking at the clock correctly. About the topic of why international religious freedom is good for all. I am thrilled to have a panel of experts and friends to discuss this topic. So I'm just going to go down the line and ask Brett and down to the colleagues. Why is IRF good for all, or is it? Because I think it's worth asking. I think it's worth reiterating the case for it as we start our conversation.
Well, if you think about it, religious freedom is really the taproot of all human rights. If you think of the important rights in our First Amendment, freedom of speech emerged out of a struggle for religious dissenters to speak. Freedom of the press emerged from a struggle to print the Bible in a vernacular that people could read. Freedom of association emerged from a struggle of religious dissenters to be able to gather and worship together. Even the right to petition the government, if you go and look at the historical record, many of those petitions came from people who were being persecuted on the basis of religion. Without religious freedom, I fear that what we'll end up with is a cut flower human rights culture where these other beautiful freedoms are severed from the taproot that genuinely gives them sustenance.
I love that, the taproot that gives it sustenance. Nuri, when you think of this question of why IRF is good for all, what's your answer to that?
The international religious freedom, to me, in addition to the historical value-based argument, to me it's a way to prevent a country or nation into humanitarian crisis, war or genocide, even terrorism. I do know for a fact that countries that respect religious freedom naturally have stability, harmony, social harmony, tolerance. Conversely, the countries that invest a lot of money on police, in the case of China, naturally creates a lot of resentment, end up being criticized in the global arena. So international religious freedom, and also a way to prevent a government's being in a difficult, challenging situation like what we have today in the United States and our relationship with Communist China. Had the United States government paid attention early on when we saw a series of early warning signs, starting from 9/11, when the Communist China trying to manipulate U.S.-led war on terrorism as an excuse to persecute religious minorities, we may have been able to prevent some of the atrocity crimes being committed against the religious. And also, I worry in a global and geopolitical sense, international religious freedom also helps to create a healthy bilateral, multilateral relationship. So I can go on and on the list of benefits. And then most importantly, I think this is a national security issue. Some countries have realized this. Our country is coming around. If you pay attention to it, and if you treat it the same way that the bad guys are treating the freedom issues, then we can prevent a lot of persecution, atrocity crimes, and war crimes. Now we're dealing with Ukraine and other places. So to me, it's more than just speaking out on behalf of persecuted religious minorities.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. So, Ambassador Sujay.
So both of my colleagues are so right in terms of persecution prevention, human rights and dignity, but also we found definitely pieces there when there's more religious freedom efforts, the efforts for people to live peaceably, but also to live with dignity. But also you look at the world, most of the world has a religious background. And so people need to have the right to do that. When we ignore religious freedom, it is saying to the world that your traditions that are hundreds and thousands of years old really are meaningless. And we found for people's faith is ultimately what helps them to soar. And so for people to have the right to wear their attire, to be able to believe and worship as they believe, allows for an explosively wonderful society as opposed to one that's persecuted and stays underground.
Excellent. So a taproot of our other rights, a central component to security and an ultimate component of human dignity. Let me start with you, Sujay, just with a question. You served as the ambassador for international religious freedom. What challenges do you see in making religious freedom a reality as a good for all, both internally and externally, when you're thinking about the U.S. government's challenge?
Oh, many challenges, but two of them are that many governments still have not taken it up as their mantle. And so we were only able to deal with certain governments that actually came to the table and said we want to deal with religious freedom. But certainly the issue of women at the table was very rare. And in most cases, when I went to the diplomatic table, women either sat in the circle around our circle, the outer circle, or were outside, and if they were inside, they were serving tea, but they were not part of the conversation. So the issue of women and religious freedom is very dear to my heart around the world. It still has not even gotten to the level of having some attention on it. And so that's been one of my passions, is to bring women's voices to the table, and I will continue to do that as long as I shall live.
Two additional points on that. I forgot to mention. Preservation of religious sites, preservation of religious architecture, and also preservation of children's rights is also part of the international religious freedom. We have seen it when a bad actor or entities, officials targeting a particular religious, ethno-religious group, they look at first women and children.
Yes.
And they start destructing, every day is Kristallnacht is the kind of a metaphor that we have seen repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me stay on that, Nuri. You lead the U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom. You're a scholar and advocate for the rights of many, particularly those in and from China. The world, in many ways, is turning a blind eye to very well-documented and widely known abuses unfolding in China because of China's economic or military or political clout in the world and its power and its willingness to reach those sources of power outside of its country. How do you make the case for why we should worry about the religious freedom of any minority or any group in China when we've got these bigger issues?
In the case of religious persecution in China, the Chinese authorities have integrated any social issues, freedom issues, even economic issues, environmental issues under the national security strategy, which is, again, kind of a dangerous trend. Everything that you demand as a human being, as Professor Scharf was mentioning, is our fundamental right. You're treated as somebody or entity, a threat to national security. So this is something that the international community is not getting. Mm-hmm. And also speaking out when we see this kind of atrocities is part of state parties, specifically in the case of Genocide Convention, their treaty obligation. They have to speak out, they have to call it, they have to stop and hold them to account. So to date, only 10 governments and parliaments in the case of Uyghur genocide have spoken out. And also one of the biggest problems that I identified and it frustrates me daily is the fact that we are allowing bad actors like Xi Jinping to normalize behaviors such as forced sterilization of middle-aged women, purposefully preventing natural population growth, but in one instance 65%, locking up 800,000 to 1 million children away, and also developing some of the most sophisticated technological tools, such as a brain-controlled weaponry that the United States government added to the entity list in 2021. So these kind of behaviors should be resolutely said no. You hear a lot of impassioned statements, speeches on Ukraine. I have to see heads of state, head of government, make similar type of impassioned statements. So this is the lack of leadership, lack of political will, and also entanglement in economic interest that has to stop.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just the centrality of China's abuse of religious groups, of minorities of all different types is just so intertwined with its ability to grow economically, its ability to be a stronger power in the world because they're able to...
They're also normalizing, exporting and normalizing the similar behavior.
Absolutely.
And others might end up paying the price.
Yes, yes, we see that around the world where China is supporting so many authoritarian regimes. Brett, let me turn to you. You've written and spoken about human dignity as the basis for human rights and particularly religious freedom. I love the term you used in a recent talk about climate change, but climate change in the area of human rights. Can you speak to how religious freedom fits into that equation for people who believe really different things? How do we move from tolerance to respect, which is one of the terms you've used many times?
Thank you. This year we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations unanimous adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And when the drafting committee was working on that document, there was a lot of disagreement about what rights should be included and what it should look like. And it was when they really focused on human dignity, which was a concept that was mentioned in the preamble to the UN Charter that progress was made. Human dignity became the truly universal value around which the conversations were built. And so if you look at the first sentence of the preamble of the UDHR, the first article of the UDHR, in both places you'll find human dignity. Now, today what we see is a politicization of human rights and a polarization around human rights. And what we have come to believe is that we need to reset human rights discourse around that foundational concept of human dignity, and hopefully it will perform a role in our age similar to the role that it played in the founding era of international human rights. And so through a process of study, distillation, conferences, we've come up with the formulation human dignity for everyone, everywhere. And this is the foundational principle not just for human rights, but for religious freedom. This is perhaps seen most explicitly in Dignitatis Humanae, the Catholic Vatican II doctrine of religious freedom, where religious freedom is rooted in the dignity of the human person, and along with the right to religious freedom comes the duty to seek and live truth. And so this is related to what we might think of as our deepest human right, which is the right to be human. And this means being able to pursue the true, the right, and the good, to have the constitutional space in which to live lives where we seek and try to live truth.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let me go back down the line now, thinking forward about what are the tools and the things that we are going to need. Do we have everything we need to make religious freedom a much more integrated and focal point for the international community? Let me start with you, Ambassador. As you're seeing, within the U.S. government or in other circles, what are the additional tools that we need, or where's that impetus need to come from?
I think Brett's word about reset, we have to reset in terms of where we are today, but the tools certainly are diplomacy, public diplomacy. We also have to make sure that we integrate the conversation into the foreign policy and the national security discussions so that religious freedom doesn't become the bottom of the totem pole. Many times we got to our issue after everything else in government was taken care of. It has to be prioritized in our foreign policy and our national security discussions. One of the things we were able to do was create the Religion and Foreign Policy Working Group, which is still embraced by government now, and also Female Faces of Faith. And I think as long as we continue to bring everyone to the table, those who believe and those who don't have the right to not believe, but as long as we bring everyone to the table, that's one of the tools we can use to begin a real conversation that resets the conversation.
Nuri, how do you see where are the opportunities, particularly in the spheres that are focused on security or on economic issues and interests, to insert religious freedom to make it a more integrated and connected issue to those things which do motivate most governments and policymakers?
The area that I follow closely is China, the country. Two things comes to mind. One is their economic interest in the context of global supply chain crisis. We need to find a way to address corporate complicity, whether it be through consumer activism or adding additional legal tools mandated by the U.S. Congress. The existing laws are outdated. We're dealing with a massive global problem in that vulnerable ethno-religious groups have been enslaved in the global supply chain. So we got to tell the business leaders that not in my name. And we need to create a very, very strong legal risk, reputational risk, and investment risk so that we can help to change their behavior. The other area is, again, going back to the technology. The science and technology development in China has not been a moral progress. We need to find a way to address, for example, in the case of one of these Chinese high-tech giants, Hikvision, installed 400 million cameras in China. Their market is saturated. They're looking for markets around the world. As we speak, more than 80 countries around the world already adopted Chinese surveillance technology. Companies like ZTE gaining ground in some countries that have a religious persecution problem and human rights abuses with this popular street light with a motion detector light. We have a Huawei that has more than cloud storage contract with more than 140 countries. That shows that our privacy has been compromised. The authoritarian regime, bad actors have been equipped with the technology provided by the Chinese state. So these are the two areas. And also I'm a very, very firm believer of sanctioning. The human rights abusers should not allowed to remain anonymous. We should call them out publicly. We should go after them, whether it be entity or individual. We should also expand the sanction to the network. It's working. You know, it's hard to see the immediate effect. It takes time for sanctions to show whether it's working or not. But we already start seeing the effect in the case of Russia, in the case of China. Huawei is not the same company as it was 3 years ago as a result of our sanctioning entity listing. So those are the areas that I would focus.
Can I just follow up on that? Have you seen, I'm sorry, did you have a...
I was going to say economic sanctions were used a lot, particularly for the countries of particular concern. But we also developed some toolkits like with Saudi Arabia and other countries with steps that you can begin to take to get off of that list of countries of particular concern. And I think that we also have to offer some tools, which was your question, that says you won't be in the same place next year as you are right now. Economic sanctions is one of them, but there can be some tools that you can begin to see a difference made, and I think we have to make sure that we offer those as well.
And both positive inducements as well as
definitely,
punitive.
definitely.
And I was just going to follow up with you, Nuri. Are there areas where you have seen a pushback on this movement of China, in particularly from the corporate space?
Green technology space. Elon Musk is the biggest proponent, or at least in publicly, Elon Musk never hesitated to criticize our government, the European government, but he doesn't do the same thing with China, because the batteries for his Tesla cars coming from China, reportedly made with the slave labor, solar panel industry. So the environmental activists need to know that it's our moral obligation to save the human being while we try to preserve the climate. We can fight genocide and ecocide at the same time. I think society, that's one of the biggest challenges we're confronting in the case of China.
Excellent. Brett, in the space that you are most active in, which is the law and international legal frameworks, are we missing anything? Is there something that we can do in that space that needs to be amended or added or changed in that space?
One thing we're really focused on this 75th anniversary year is really thinking about the universality of human dignity. And so we're going to have 3 book projects, one on Asian perspectives on human dignity, one on African perspectives on human dignity, and several conferences culminating in a book on Islamic perspectives on human dignity. We really need to understand each other's way of thinking about these fundamental values a little bit better than we do. We need to get a little bit more attuned at listening. We have pretty good legal tools to some extent. International law we think about a lot, but much more likely it's going to be national law and local law that really affects the lives people lead. When we look for religious discrimination, we find it in registration laws, we find it in land use and zoning. Those are the places where we find religious discrimination frequently, including in the United States. You asked about tolerance and respect. And I think these are both really important principles. Sometimes we downplay the importance of tolerance and talk about how we need respect instead. And I understand that. But tolerance is a really useful legal concept. We can enforce through our law the requirement that we tolerate one another, that we give each other the space to live our lives, even if our values are different one from another. Respect, I think, is really a political principle. It's something that we need to demonstrate in our political lives, in our social lives, in our interactions with each other. But I'm not sure it works well as a legally mandated principle, much less love. That's actually what we really want. But we don't want it as a legal principle. We want it as a moral and religious principle. I think of the Hamilton musical where King George is a comic figure who says he is going to send his troops to kill your friends and relatives to show you his love. And we don't need coercive love. What we need is love as a religious principle, as a moral principle. We need respect as a political principle and as a social principle. And we need to enforce tolerance as a legal principle where we actually let each other disagree with one another. And we create enough constitutional space where we can try to live our visions of the true, the right, and the good.
That is a great point to end on. Let me thank all of our panelists for excellent comments and all the work they're doing, and wish all of you a wonderful time at this excellent conference, and that it gives a lot of impetus to the work that you're doing to change where we are globally on religious freedom. Thank you.
We're going to take a
Now mankind is more aggrieved than ever in every possible way, from the indignities of poverty and oppression to the ravages of war and violence, and the humiliation of slavery and trafficking. It is time for humanity and religions to come together and collectively lift mankind out of this sorry plight. At the start of February 2018, over 200 religious leaders and senior politicians from the 3 Abrahamic faiths and other world religions gathered at a hotel in Washington to launch the modern alliance of virtue between religions. It was a momentous occasion.